Vandra? Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Alrighty. So Imani has been a long time activist in the anti-police brutality, anti-war, the anti-death penalty, the LGBTQY, and the harm reduction activist. He also holds a master's in social work from NYU's Silver School of Social Work and a master's in public administration from the Wagner School. So it is just our honor to have you here today, Imani. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Dupre and Barry, thank you so much. Your music is just amazing always. And thank you to Vandra and everyone else that's here today and asked me to come and talk. I'm not going to talk for very long. I'd really like us to have a conversation. So first and foremost, I think the most important thing for us is that we are a Black Lives Matter organization. And that's really important in the understanding that we really look to the fact that Brooklyn has always been the largest, the largest population of Black people in New York City have lived in Brooklyn, and what that also means in regard to police violence, and then being targeted with deed fraud or illegal evictions, etc. We're dealing with a lot of homeowners right now who have also been illegally evicted from their homes that they've been in for 26 years, they bought and paid for through deed fraud. So our main thing is that we do focus on the neighborhoods of Crown Heights, Flatbush, and East Flatbush for our police work, but we're Brooklyn-wide around anti-gentrification work. And we were founded at the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement in 2013. We are an abolitionist group, police, ICE, prisons, and particularly we were just created as a direct response to more police harassment, more gentrification, tenant harassment going on, and our sort of cop watch catch 'em of East Flatbush, Flatbush, and Crown Heights. Since 2012, there has been 9 people murdered or shot by the NYPD just in our 3 little neighborhoods that we, patrol as a cop watch team. And that's, again, when we think of the awakening, both of the Black Lives Matter movement and the understanding, like at that time, first and foremost, that, gentrifying neighborhoods had more police violence, more stop and frisk, and again, police murder. And the same way that we're looking nationally at the fact in 2012, people were talking about like a Black person is killed every 28 minutes, etc. in the United States. So these are the reasons that we organize social justice and social change. We do a lot of street outreach, a lot of social media campaign, political, and as you already seen, like direct action. When you can't hide from us, you're a developer, we won't come to your house. But most importantly, I think one of our big pieces, sort of our, truth is to really define gentrification, because it's, the narrative is so all over the place and people have all kinds of definitions. So here's our definition. We define gentrification as a concerted, deliberate effort to price out low to middle income residents from neighborhoods by city government, corporations, real estate developers, and landlords in favor of renting, selling, and catering to people of higher or more flexible income. We see gentrification as an intersection between race and class and gender and sexuality, gender identity, age, our abilities, nation of origin, immigration status, and then also physical and mental capacities, and the way that it impacts us in under the capitalist system, and the way that it impacts our community as a large. So we also like to define that it's also, we see this as a very distinct difference between the historic voluntary migration of working and middle-class families from cities to suburbs, as opposed to what's currently happening in existing communities, which is involuntarily. People are involuntarily being priced out, being bought out, forcibly removed from the neighborhoods, by the government and corporations. Name a mayoral administration. People date back, the planning of gentrification back to Koch. And some people see it between 50 and 70 years in the making to make, cities become these centers where people that, historically have not lived there come and move in. It's now a real estate, investment. New York, Boston, San Francisco, folks are not even living in the US, but it's a real estate investment. And this is why we're going to price out and make sure housing is unaffordable. So the last thing we believe and think is really important is that we experience firsthand the same unscrupulous property owners use tactics to force out long-time, older tenants of color out of their rent-stabilized apartments, will turn around and illegally overcharge incoming younger white tenants for the same apartment. For this very reason, we believe that all of us, longtime and new residents, communities of color and white communities, low-income and middle-class people have a stake in the urgent struggle to save affordable housing in Brooklyn. So I'll just quickly just talk about our methods, because I think ultimately that's what's, most important. We, early on, we were just clear from our attorneys that the only way to really do this work was to shame, do lots of public shaming. Our attorneys were like, the police, developers, landlords, they don't have any shame. So shame them, hold them accountable. And so as you could see, from driving up to Great Neck, New York, we went to the mall and handed out flyers with the cell phone numbers of these developers. We also did this in Queens because they used to have their office in Queens. And so just to generate this energy of really truthfully, look at these predators that are they came in, this 100-year-old brownstone in Bed-Stuy. They took the property next door, they bought that. And you always think who lived there, who got displaced there, who got bought out, who was forced out, whose deeds were stolen. But here they have this property, and what their tactic is for you to sell to them is to deface your property. They put a railing in without any consent, and then dumped all of their debris in front of this sister's brownstone. So she got fined by the city. She was fined. These same developers, it was beautiful. So we do public shaming. There's a petition out, went over, there was some international news about it, and people got to tell their stories. This same developer, we bought a house from this developer, and they, put trash, literally sealed up trash in the wall. So here you are, and you're like, I am in my new place. And they're like, what's that smell? What's that smell? And over time, the smell just got bigger and bigger. And these folks had walled up trash into these folks' home. So they even hear this story. That's the point of people can find each other. We have bad lawyer lists. So people can say oh, we're not going to work with these predatory lawyers, but this is what this lawyer did to me. And this is what this lawyer did to me. It's our big strategy is building a movement of folks that, rapid respond, are there for each other, because this is the piece of gentrification. And this is the piece of how racism works, how, elder abuse or oppression, we just think of all the ways in our lives that we are held back as people, is this understanding is oh, you can't fight the system. This is just the way things are. You're powerless. We try to really focus on hope and victories. That's our big thing, and we don't care how small the victory is. We work with tenants, homeowners, small businesses, cultural centers. So to us, if, there's more, like a building I was just in on Thursday that we're organizing, now folks are saying just because there's a tenant association now over the last couple months, there's better heat in the building because they know that's a violation. They're going through a whole struggle around lead, and it's beautiful because everyone is calling to get the lead out of the building, and they have community that's also calling. You don't have to do this by yourself. One of our first victories was we won a ramp for accessibility in a rent stabilized building in Crown Heights. Really, truthfully, how did we win that struggle? Because people from Utah called the landlord and said, like, hi, we don't understand why these folks, these, elders and families don't have a ramp in Crown Heights. And really, then we had a tenant, we called a tenant meeting, and we were bringing a lawyer, one of our trusted lawyers, and we came before the meeting, the ramp was already built. Why? Because the threat of like, this is already viral. People in other states are coming, calling us. And the landlord was like, I'm scared. We love when landlords call us and say like, you're ruining my business. We're very angry. This is not fair. And we're like, thank you. Thank you so much. It's so good. You don't usually get that kind of praise from your enemy. So it's really good to know. Or the same thing, like, we have saved or helped people move with dignity of like 5 or so Black-owned businesses. And with the understanding that other business owners, Asian, white folks, like also come to us, but maybe we haven't had a public direct action. Maybe we're just there to like support. And so, same thing, to watch tenants that live around the block that we're organizing with to come to out in the snow to rally around a long-standing bakery in Flatbush. I, in fact, used to live above them, and that's how we were able to save. They had already exhausted court. There was a vacate date. Commercial tenants, do not have the same rights, and they're not guaranteed a lease or anything. So the community really responded. There was petitions, there were rallies, and it was beautiful to see how the community showed up to like support Errol's Bakery. And really, truthfully, how did we win that struggle? We then had people, of different prestige or whatever, call and say, we're very concerned about what's going on at Errol's. We want a meeting. I am so-and-so chancellor, blah, blah, blah. Hi, I'm an artist in the neighborhood, whatever people wanted to say, to that we're the landlord down to say like, okay, I'll send their lease. Okay, I just don't want to meet with you all. And that's like, again, like just the public pressure, just the understanding that you're not doing this. And this has been like a big thing that we've been cultivating because we've been socialized not to talk about our rent, our leases. We've been socialized, we're not going to talk about deed fraud. We're socialized to keep these things because they are, transactional, pieces. I don't want my landlord to say, oh, Imani Henry owes me all this kind of rent. We don't want that. We don't want the public stuff around it. So just changing people's understanding, we not only need to talk to each other about what's going on. Did I freeze? Am I back? I'm back, I'm sorry. But we also need to like organize together. So just lastly, and wrapping up, I will share really quickly, just like a sentence or two. So we have had success with like street vendors, particularly the corner of Flatbush and Church. There was a huge year of struggle after the police, the Department of Health kept ticketing, confiscating carts. And again, mostly Spanish-speaking, particularly mono-Spanish-speaking leadership of vendors in our neighborhood, like fought the 7th precinct, and in 2018 won an amazing victory where to this day, there's no ticketing happening in that corner of street vendors. And so beautifully, because now, as we already know, there's like another additional 3,000 vendors in New York City due to the pandemic, due to the economic, hardships that everyone is living through or have been living through. So this is, wonderful. I say like move with dignity, that a sister that runs Lionheart in Crown Heights, been on Nostrum Avenue. Am I back? Yes, there I am. I have to do a little dance to make sure I'm still in the thing. So, you know, we could not save her lease. Her landlord was horrible. We put him on blast so badly. I mean, where her business was, she didn't have a bathroom. She had no heat. It was just horrible. She'd gone through that for over 20 something years. So when the community came together, we made a video, we defended her when her landlord, came to like assault her or be rude or disrespectful. But the other thing is that the community raised money so she could move. The community came together and helped her back. And she found a space only 2 blocks away where she on Nostrum Avenue, so she could keep and retain her customer base. She's still there. And that's kind of like, any victory. Okay, we can't save this business. Let's move you. How do we move you with dignity? A site on the Underground Railroad, 227 Dutfield Street. This is 16 years of struggle. Mama Joy Chilton, bless her, like this was like a struggle. She lived in the house, and eminent domain of the city, again, of downtown Brooklyn was like, we're taking your house. The same way the Barclays was built, And for 16 years, she struggled. And then she passed away. Her daughter took up the struggle with her, other people in the community. But then in 2000, I believe 2018, 2018, we were called in the summer because they were going to demolish the site on the Underground Railroad. Just like if we can think about downtown Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy, Fort Greene, how many connecting churches were part of the underground? That's our history. That's real. That's true history of downtown Brooklyn and the surrounding neighborhoods. They were all part of our, as Black people, our, quest of freedom. And in the same way that so many abolitionists, this was actually a house of the Truesdales that were white abolitionists, like back in the day. And we learned something very important, that again, for the city, for Black people or brown people, the city of New York doesn't think cultural or historical significance is really that important. It's architectural, is what we were told. So we fought the Department of Buildings, Landmark Commission, we fought. First, it was very nice and sort of like, do the right thing, do the right thing. And then we found out in February of 2019 that they weren't going to landmark this. They were going to demolish it. They were going to just do it. And then we were like, nah, this is Black History Month. You're going to deny us this historical place? We also, very sadly, but proudly, there were so many children talking about, this is my freedom. Because that's what we want, to be a museum and that young people can go. So even there's a picture, I asked this young person, of course, through their parent, do you want to speak? And she was really like, excited about that. And 7, 8, maybe 9 years old. But as we talked as a community about it, everyone speaking out, she's got incredibly sad. And there's this picture of her holding one of the signs to her chest. And when I asked her to speak, she said, I can't. She was so upset that why is this being, all the children were like, why is this being taken away from us? And that's so powerful, that this is an intergenerational struggle. This means so much to Black people, to historic, this historic landmark. So in 2019, we fought and won. And 2020, it was announced by the mayor's office that 227 Dutfield had been saved. There's still an ongoing struggle because now it's owned by the city. They bought it from the developer, so it's not being demolished, but it's also not being taken care of either. They're interested in the huge skyscraper, luxury tower, and fake grass park, next door. They're more, interested in the dog park that they're making right next to the historic building than the building itself. So the struggle continues, but just the understanding that like an intergenerational group of people, of course, they're historians, of course, there are professors, And then there's 8-year-olds and 3 years old. That, like, I mean, what can you say when a child in a stroller is carrying a sign? This is a community effort and a struggle. And that's what we're cultivating. We can do this. We don't need the politicians. If we can force them to do the right thing, great. But we can do it through people power. We can do it. If we all stand together, we can do it. And that's really what E4F's about. Thank you.
Imani, wonderful, beautiful.